Every gilded cage is built with walls of comfort. The only question is what you're paying for them.
Have you ever just stopped and wondered how much of your day is really, truly your own? You know, how many of the choices you make, the things you want, even the beliefs you hold, are actually yours? In this explainer, we're going to pull back the curtain on these invisible systems that are designed to influence our behavior. And we're going to ask a really fundamental question. In this age of super smart algorithms, are we still in command?
So let's just dive right in with a question that honestly gets right to the heart of the matter. It's a pretty unsettling thought, isn't it? The idea that the very things we complain about, the endless scrolling, the guilt about not being productive enough, the constant outrage, might actually be giving us some weird kind of comfort. Look, this isn't about blaming anyone. It's just about admitting that our own psychology is the fertile ground where these systems of influence plant their seeds.
All right, so here's the game plan. First, we're going to look at the user manual for the human mind, all the little cognitive biases and psychological triggers that make us, well, us, and vulnerable. Then we'll meet the architects, the people who first figured out how to pull these triggers on a massive scale. After that, we'll jump to today and look at the algorithm of control, where AI basically puts all of this on steroids. And finally, we'll talk about the path forward. How do we put humans back in the driver's seat?
Okay, so if we want to understand how we can be controlled, we've got to start by understanding the blueprint of our own minds. And these aren't flaws, right? They're fundamental parts of our psychology. They're shortcuts our brains use to get through the day, but they can also be turned into backdoors for manipulation.
This right here is basically the bystander effect. We are constantly looking to the crowd to figure out what we should be doing. And on social media, this instinct just creates viral trends and herd mentalities like crazy. We're outsourcing our decisions to the group, not because we're consciously choosing to, but because it's a deep, deep reflex.
And this hits on how fragile our own personal stories are. Your memory isn't like a perfect video recording. It's more like a story your brain retells every time. And because those stories feel so true, the emotions they stir up are completely real, even if the memory itself is kind of flawed. And what that means is that our reality can be shaped just by manipulating the stories we believe about ourselves.
This is such a classic control tactic. You get presented with two options, but they both lead to pretty much the same place. We see it in sales, in politics, everywhere. We get so focused on the act of choosing that we feel empowered, totally missing the fact that the real choice, to just walk away, was never even offered. It's basically compliance dressed up to look like freedom.
We're all just conditioned to obey authority that looks the part. The right symbols, a lab coat, a fancy corporate logo, a slick-looking app can completely bypass our critical thinking. The system just calmly tells us we're following the rules, which takes away the burden of responsibility. And that makes it so much easier for us to just comply without asking any tough questions.
So we've got these vulnerabilities, these little backdoors in our minds. The next big question is, who figured out how to pick the locks? And how did they turn that into these massive economic systems? Well, this didn't start with the internet, not even close. The blueprint for all this was drafted almost 100 years ago.
So this is a really pivotal moment in history. You've got Sigmund Freud, right? The father of psychoanalysis. He's digging into the unconscious mind to try and help people heal. Then his nephew, a guy named Edward Bernays, looks at his uncle's work and has a totally different idea. He realized that if people are driven by these irrational, unconscious desires, then you don't have to sell them stuff based on logic or need. You just have to appeal to their hidden emotions. He basically took therapy and flipped it on its head to create modern PR and propaganda.
And he wasn't shy about it either. In his own book called Propaganda, Bernays literally wrote that business has to inject itself into the lives and customs of millions. And let's be clear, he wasn't just talking about running a few ads. He was laying out a plan to fundamentally change culture by tying mass-produced things to our deepest, most unconscious desires.
Okay, so fast forward a few decades. Thinkers like Noam Chomsky and Edward Herman build on these ideas, and they create something they call the propaganda model. And their big argument was that in a democracy, you don't need a dictator with heavy-handed censorship to control people. Instead, the whole media system has these built-in filters that just naturally shape the news to serve the interests of the powerful.
And these were the 5 original filters. First, ownership. Pretty simple. Who owns the media outlet? Their interests are going to be reflected. Second, advertising. Media needs ad money to survive, so they're probably not going to run stories that tick off their advertisers. Third, sourcing. Media tends to rely on a handful of powerful government and corporate sources for their info. Fourth, flack. This is all the negative feedback and pressure campaigns used to punish media that steps out of line. And finally, the dominant ideology, which sets the boundaries for what's even considered a normal topic for debate.
Now, this is where it gets really wild. Let's see how that old model gets a massive and kinda terrifying upgrade for today. Ownership isn't just about a TV station anymore. It's about a couple of tech giants controlling the entire digital infrastructure. Advertising has morphed into surveillance capitalism, a system that doesn't just sell ad space, it sells predictions about what you will do next. Sourcing is now handled by black box algorithms. Flack has been weaponized into mass online harassment mobs. And ideology is enforced through opaque content moderation policies that decide what's acceptable speech for billions of people.
And that brings us to the technological heart of this whole thing. If Bernays wrote the psychological blueprint and Chomsky described the system, then artificial intelligence is the engine. It's the amplifier that automates, scales up, and pretty much perfects this entire system of control.
Just look at the difference here. It's stark. Traditional propaganda was like a carpet bomb. It hit big, broad groups of people. AI-driven manipulation, though, is a sniper rifle. It targets you, specifically, based on your own unique psychological profile. It's not slow and manual. It's automated, and it happens in an instant. It doesn't wait for feedback from focus groups. It adapts in real time to every single click and every pause you make, constantly learning how to better grab your attention and shape your decisions. The result is a system that's everywhere, and it's incredibly hard to even notice.
And one of the main ways it does this is with the echo chamber. The algorithm learns what you like, what you're afraid of, and what you already believe. And then it just feeds you a never-ending stream of content that confirms all of it. This isn't just about showing you things you'll enjoy, it's about building a personalized reality just for you. A filter bubble where your beliefs are constantly echoed back at you and are almost never challenged. And that makes us more certain, more polarized, and ultimately a lot more predictable.
And this brings us to what's paying for all of this, the economic engine, surveillance capitalism. This is the business model of our time. Your personal experience, your clicks, your likes, your private conversations, where you go, that's the free raw material. It gets scooped up, analyzed by AI, and used to create prediction products that get sold to advertisers. The goal isn't just to sell you a product anymore. The goal is to sell certainty about your future behavior. And what's the best way to guarantee future behavior? Well, it's to gently shape it in the present. This is the crucial point. The system isn't manipulative by accident. It is profitable because it is manipulative.
And this pressure, it doesn't just stay on your screen, does it? It seeps into our whole culture. This logic of endless optimization, of constant productivity. It makes us feel like rest is a moral failing. We feel guilty for not doing something, for not hustling. And why is this so common? Well, because people who are tired and burnt out are compliant. They just don't have the energy to question things, to resist, or even to imagine a different way of living. Exhaustion itself becomes a tool of social control.
So, after going through the psychology, the history, and the technology behind all this, it can feel pretty bleak. But the most important question is still ahead of us. What on earth do we do about it? How do we start building a future where technology actually serves us and not the other way around? The sources point to a few key areas.
All right, on a big picture, societal level, we need some real policy changes. This means demanding transparency, so we can actually understand how these algorithms are making decisions that affect our lives. It means we have to mandate clear labels for AI-generated content to fight back against disinformation. It means we need a fundamental overhaul of our education system to include things like algorithmic literacy and critical thinking. We have to support diverse sources of information that aren't hooked on the profit motives of surveillance capitalism. And maybe most importantly, we have to get past this world where tech companies regulate themselves with voluntary guidelines and actually establish binding, enforceable ethical rules.
And this, right here, is the core challenge. This is the fundamental problem we have to solve. The financial incentives of surveillance capitalism are perfectly aligned with changing our behavior for profit. So any meaningful solution, any ethical AI framework that's actually worth something, has to start by putting a different set of values first. It absolutely has to prioritize human well-being and our autonomy over purely commercial interests. That's the conflict.
So we'll end right where we began, with that big question. The systems we've talked about aren't just tools. They're environments. They shape how we see the world, and they nudge our actions every step of the way. They're designed to be invisible, to feel like our own thoughts. Just acknowledging that they exist is the first huge step. Asking ourselves, day by day, choice by choice, is this me or is this the algorithm? That, right there, is how we begin to take back command.